Hey everyone, this is Jeff Norris, the 2024 Alabama Teacher of the Year. I'm on a mission to amplify education in the state of Alabama and celebrate the power of specific teaching strategies and initiatives. As I travel around the state, visit teachers' classrooms, and meet new people with innovative ideas, I want to share these moments with you so we can all celebrate and grow better together. Education is my passion, and I want you to realize and embrace the opportunities we have to change lives each and every day. This is the power of a moment. All right, everybody, good afternoon. This is Jeff Norris, the 2024 Alabama Teacher of the Year. This is episode 9 of The Power of a Moment, and it is an extremely special episode because it's always a special episode, but today's really extra special because it is May 20th, 2024. The kids have like T-minus less than 5 days of school left. I actually am no longer the current teacher of the year, and this is my last podcast of this type. I'm hoping it will continue even after this year is over, but for right now, this is kind of the end of the beginning. It's been so much fun learning how to podcast and meeting people from around the state, and I'm super excited about this episode because if I could pick like one word that I'm extremely passionate about, it's the word engagement. And so we're going to end with one of my favorites, the power of engagement. And I get to invite to the show. Let's see if we can stick her up here. Here we go. This is Lauren Brascho, everybody. We're super excited. Lauren is a teacher in Pell City, Alabama. And we met, again, about a year ago exactly, at the Teacher of the Year ceremony. Lauren was actually the other elementary finalist for Alabama Teacher of the Year. Deservedly so, by the way, Miss Brascho. And we've gotten to know each other a little bit over the year. I've gotten to visit her classroom and her school building. They've got an amazing school. And so I know that she gets excited about student engagement as well. So welcome to the show. We're excited you're here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Look, and Lauren is a perfectionist, and so she is going to continue to want to fix things. I know how she is, and we're going to have a great conversation. So look, you just be you, and we're excited to talk about this topic. Lauren is teaching third grade, and tell us like what grade levels you've taught and what you've done and where you are and all the good stuff, so people can get to know you real quick.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me here. I feel super honored. I've been following your podcast, and they're super cool, and I've learned some new things, especially just from our teachers in Alabama. But I am a third grade teacher. I teach at Coosa Valley Elementary School in Pell City, and this is my 14th year teaching. I've taught every grade, kindergarten through 4th, except for 2nd grade, and started out teaching kindergarten, and then I quickly moved up to 1st grade, and God bless her. This just takes a special person. Our kindergarten teachers are amazing. Yep. And I taught 1st grade for a few years, and then my principal asked me what I thought about 3rd grade. And so I moved up and loved it. And I virtual taught some things during COVID, a couple different grades. And I'm just really excited to be in 3rd grade. It is a hard grade. It's challenging, especially with all the new things that we're doing in the state of Alabama with the science of reading and the Alabama Literacy Act that's been passed that specifically affects our 3rd grade students. So I'm just really honored to be gifted with that. I wanted to, when I think about why did I want to be a teacher, as long as I can remember, literally, I can't ever remember wanting to do anything else. I have some people in my family who are diagnosed with dyslexia. And at a young age, I just kind of started doing things at the time that I didn't know were multisensory learning. That's what we're doing, now with the science of reading and different things. And I did that. And then now being trained, I'm like, wow, that's what they needed to help them learn. The research shows that 95% of our students can and will learn to read with this instruction. And so it's just really neat getting to implement it. And I'm excited to be doing it in my classroom. And I'm excited for all the teachers in our state that are doing it now.
Yeah, our scores, in case you didn't hear this in the news, we were at 91% sufficiency rate for our 3rd graders across the state of Alabama, which is super exciting. It's a really big growth opportunity for our state. I think last year I can't remember the exact number, but it went up over 10 or 12 percentage
It's
points.
amazing.
So yeah, and then the piece that I love that I think we're I'm maybe less of a rule follower than you are. So like I think the research side doesn't excite me as much as it excites you, but I think what's neat is that the research supports this pedagogy piece that we're now really I don't say pushing, but with the state legislature kind of backing it with money and with laws, like we kind of have this push for really quality instruction. And what I like about what we're going to talk about today is this engagement piece is now how can we take what this quality instruction looks like? And some people may say, oh, it's not quite as engaging for kids. It's not quite as exciting, possibly, right? But I think you have found ways and you are like surrounded by teachers around you who are really like finding these really innovative ways to take the science of reading, which kind of sounds scary and sounds, the research scares people, but really find ways to make that really engaging for kids and fun for teachers to teach too, right? So like it can be both, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So okay. So when I hear engagement, like, you and I both have talked with a lot of different teachers this year, and when I hear engagement, it's kind of like this. I don't want to say. I don't want to say a cuss word. Like that's what I want to say. Like it really
Yeah.
is. Like sometimes you hear engagement, and teachers are like, it really turns them away from what you're going to talk about. They'll be like, I'm already tap dancing all day long in front of my kids, and I can't do anything more. Like, don't give me more to do because I'm already doing everything I can to hook them, right? Or
Yes.
I hear teachers who say, this turns into this like, this is what they said, these kids aren't turning in their work, or these kids aren't getting things done, or these kids can't have discussions. And it's always that preface of these kids, which infuriates me a little bit. I'm like, these are your kids, these are our kids, right? So, but I think engagement becomes this kind of scary term, and teachers feel like it's all on us. And so I'm hoping that you and I kind of planned some ideas of things to talk about today. I'm hoping these are some ideas that will excite people and get teachers where they feel like, hey, it's important. Like engagement is really, really important, but we're not giving up this academic side, the really like, and you and I both really have high standards for our kids. And so I want people to hear both of these things. Like we are not fun for the sake of having fun, but we are want our kids to be engaged, right?
Absolutely. I feel like when you said like it's a scary word, I think when we say like engagement, teachers feel limited sometimes with what they can do in the classroom. And when you feel like that might be limited to like our creativity and our engagement, sometimes they have like a stereotype. And I feel like something really powerful that happened in my professional life that is here to just like bust that stereotype is, I think this was in the year 2016 or 17, when our principal sent every teacher over a course of time to the Ron Clark Academy in Atlanta. And I had heard a little bit about it, and I'm a super fangirl of King. And so I have read all their books that she writes with her husband, Wade. And I was just like, yes, please send me, send me. So getting to go there and see it in action, it's like it's like a big like pep rally for teachers.
Yeah.
So I would encourage anybody that ever gets that opportunity to do it. But after going and reading their book, the first book that I read by Hope and Wade King was The Wild Card. And in it, and it's all just about creativity. And up until then, like you said, oh, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. People that know me, they're like, Lauren wants to do it right. She wants to. And I've always been that way. And my teaching wasn't as exciting. I was teaching all the standards, but did my kids enjoy it? Right. Did they do it because they had to, or did they enjoy it? And so in the beginning of that book, it just says, like, oh, be open-minded, have a growth mindset that it doesn't have to be perfect, but try one thing. Here's this list of all these different strategies, all these different fun things that are fun, because kids care about the things that they enjoy. So when you can make things in your classroom enjoyable for the children, they're bought in. And when they're bought in, then they're motivated to learn and they're engaged. Right. And that just really like changed me. And like, I was like, but I have to like make props and like write, and my handwriting's not that good. And it's like, as soon as I said, if I'm going to ask my students to have a growth mindset, I need to have a growth mindset myself. And so I just did it. And I made a poster and tablecloths. And they were like, wow, that's not it's bad. Like it just one thing led into another.
That's so good. Yeah, and we're going to. I mean, I can't wait to dive into this because room transformations is like the funnest thing ever. But it is again, it's that scary first step. But every journey begins with a single step. So I like the way that you phrased that, and I think it'll be good. We're going to share lots of pictures and ideas with people, and it is that one thing of like take one idea and just try it and see what happens. And it is the same thing we ask of our kids. So I really appreciate that. We're going to dig into it even more as we go throughout this. So I've have this. I'm going to share my screen because I found this article the other day. Let's see if I do it right. Found this article the other day. Tell me if that's working. Does it look good?
Yes.
All right. So this is an article I found the other day. It was in the ASCD journal, and it's called 4C's for Student Engagement. I'm a big Hattie fan, John Hattie fan. He writes a lot of stuff with Fisher and Fry. So I was like, immediately I saw those names and I was like, I trust these people. And it said engagement. So I was like, we have to look at this. And so I read this article earlier this fall in our district. We had a district professional development with about 150 people. And it's one of those things, where sometimes you get an article that you're asked to read, and it doesn't always, it's like with our kids, like that's not always the most engaging thing. Pun intended, but this article was like the hit of the professional development. Like, and we did everything. Like, we did really some really fun activities, and we like dressed up and decorated. And all the feedback we got, everybody was like, "This was the best article that we've read in a really long time." And so I think it's really practical for teachers. That's why I like this article. And we're not going to read it together, but I wanted to put this up here on the screen so that people who may be watching this podcast can find this article, and here's the kind of information about it. And there was one thing I just kind of wanted to use this to start off with, and you kind of have already mentioned this in the introduction right here. Can you see this?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. So it says, this is the sentence I love. It says, real engagement isn't just engagement of students, signs of attentiveness, fulfilling requirements. It's also engagement by students. So are the students interacting with what they learn? So we're moving from this idea of more for teachers to do, which is okay if it's worthwhile. Like, I'm okay with that. Teaching is hard, and I'm okay with hard work if it's worthwhile. But even moving from that to engagement by students, or like you said, if we can change this one thing, this environment, or do the one fun, quote unquote, scary, whatever, fun activity, if you just put yourself out there with that activity, it pulls kids in so that when you can give them something really difficult to do or interact with, they're more likely to do it. So they talk a little bit about this. I'm going to throw this out to you. Let's just maybe if there's anything that catches your eye. They talk about building the environment, so making connections with kids, and how when you want to engage kids, that student-teacher relationship is really important. They also talk about like making really high expectations for your kids. So again, we kind of move from that, I call it the F word. This is great. This is such a great last episode. I call it the F word. The fun word is scary for people because they think you're no longer relevant and you're not teaching, really high standards. But they talk about moving from just being fun to really having high expectations for kids. And then they kind of end it with this, like you mentioned, this growth mindset. So really getting kids to set goals and kind of shifting from just engagement of students to empowering our students to kind of engage or challenge themselves, and moving from that progression. If I can find a way as a teacher, I'm going to go back and look at our screen. If I can find a way as a teacher to really shift their thinking from that, then I say that's a win, right?
Absolutely. I love, I think it was the second part in that article where it mentioned the relationships. I want to go back and read that whole article.
Yeah.
But we'll keep talking, where it just basically said, like, are the relationships that we build. And I think about that from last year. I recently certified for my national board certification, and in component 4, when it talks about like our knowledge of students, I think of that. And like, when we have a relationship with them, we know what intrinsically motivates our students. We know what's going on in their life. If they're having a bad day, if there's something that we can do to meet their needs. And when we have that knowledge of our students and that relationship is there, then we can lead them into being better engaged. So I just feel like that matters on so many different levels.
Yeah. So this is like when we talk about room transformations, again, it's this kind of buzzword that we do. And I just like to have a couple of notes. So I'm gonna put them up here for you. And we can kind of talk through. We got a lot of pictures to share, and we're just gonna get excited about this. So, and I went too far ahead. I'm ruining it. Gah! All right. So it's okay. yeah, it's a good preview. So, and I love that what you just said, because I think this idea of room transformations is one way that you and I have in common to really hook our students. So let's today, I think let's just phrase like two different kind of sections of our time together, and we have plenty of time. So like we'll spend a little bit of time talking about engagement of students. So what can teachers do, and specifically maybe with room transformations, because this is one way that we found that really hook kids. What can we do to pull kids in? And then the second half, let's talk about more about like cognitive engagement. So, what are some things that kids can do that are really going to empower them to be engaged with the content? And I think knowing your kids, like you just said, that relationship that you have is important for both of them. It's important for this first one because it helps you pull in topics and relevancy with some of the room transformations that you do, and it also helps you know how far to push your kids when we speak to that empowerment piece and that engagement by students a little bit later. So I'm just going to hit it off. So, and honestly, like you mentioned, Hope and Wade King, they're two of my favorites too. And a lot of this research is really from them. And I honestly don't know how research based this is, but I will tell you my personal research that Jeff Norris College of Education
We do.
says that this is real life, says that this is one of the best things you can do. And I would, again, like you said, go and try it and see what you experience in your classroom. So
Yeah.
part of this might be from a couple of experts, and part of this may just be from room D1 at Oak Mountain Middle School. But so when we talk about transforming the physical environment of the classroom, this is kind of what the essence of a room transformation is. But it's not just decorating a classroom. Like I need people to hear that when they see these
Yeah.
pictures. Right? Yeah, chime in. So like this is really like unifying all the things that we're kind of talking about in class.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing this main screen, so I need you to jump in whenever you have something to say, Lauren.
Okay. Yes, I think like the physical transformation. I had one teacher before that was hesitant to try a room transformation, had never tried one before. And she was like, "What? I just feel like I'm like having a birthday party in my classroom." And I was like, "Well, I want to come to a birthday party. Like, don't you, if you're a kid, kids care about the things they enjoy. So do they enjoy it?" And I said, "You don't, it can be as little as you want it. It can be as big as you want it." And I had some seniors walk through our elementary school. They, our seniors that are graduating always come back and like wear their cap and gown and walk through. And it's so sweet. And I always ask them, I was like, what was your biggest memory from my classroom? And you know what? They don't ever tell me about like this lesson that I do that is like super boring. They're like, "Oh, well, we loved when we played pie face when we were learning about equivalent fractions." And you know, they're 18 and they can say that. So it is not always a birthday party, but wouldn't you want to go to one? So
yeah, and I love the way I love what you said, because we'll talk about this later. So when I talk to people about it, I say you said we played pie face when we learned about equivalent fractions. So they tied it right there into the content that you were covering. I always tell my kids, like, and we'll talk about this when we go through this, is like when you go home and you talk to your parents, it's like, what do you tell them that you were doing? And this, like this slide talks about. So like when your parents are like, "What'd you do today?" And they're like, "Oh, Mr. Norris dressed up as Super Mario." And like the very first thing parents are going to say is, why did he do that? And if the kids can answer that why question, then we know we were purposeful and intentional, and it made a difference, right? If they say, "I don't know, he's goofy," like that doesn't quite have the same amount of weight to it, right? But it is like, this is exactly what you were just saying. It creates this experience for kids. It's a memory, and honestly, like even if I didn't have, quote unquote research or data to come back and say my kids' test scores were better because of this, what I will tell you is like their experience in my classroom was better, and in so doing, like their experience with school is better. And I think that pays in dividends, as much as anything. So I do think there's that piece.
Yes, and the data is there. We're
Yeah.
not pulling it up on the screen right now, but I can tell you when my school, when we first started doing room transformations, just like our principal encouraged us, just try one per 9 weeks. And I love that when we have leaders that are encouraging us and they see the things that the teachers are passionate about, when our leaders encourage and support their teachers to do that, it just takes off. And our data was lower according to our ACAP scores, I think back then it was ARMT,
Mhm.
in data and fractions, data analysis and fractions were lower, or one of our lower ones. And so that's where we picked that standard, and the rigor was very high
That's right.
in the classroom. It was fun, but it was very rigorous.
Love
And
that.
so our scores came back the next time, and it was, and
I
they could
love that. That's so good. Okay, so we're gonna like rapid fire. We're not gonna spend too long because I know how you get when I start yeah,
Yeah.
when I start sharing pictures, I get excited. But I just want to show people kind of a variety of things. And you can even tell me like, hey, this is a great video to show, or let's move ahead and talk about something else.
Okay.
But maybe give us like a quick background about like what we're looking at, and then maybe like what standards it tied to, and maybe a core memory, or we can watch the video together, whatever you think is best.
So this year, every single room transformation that I did was on a standard that my students needed to show improvement for. And this is the first one that we see right here is Starbucks Cafe, I called it. And so it was on elements of poetry. And sometimes, especially for my third graders, they're like, poetry can be a drag. It's boring. So I was like, how can we enhance this? I do want to point out too, something that sometimes is a negative thing that people say with room transformations that I would disagree with is that they are costly. Well, they are not. Actually, every single thing, I did not spend a penny on this room transformation. It was chart paper that I used. And then also ask your community and your local businesses for donations and just say like, this is supporting our kids. This is how we're going to use it. We took pictures. And then with our writing, my students also write thank you cards to our local businesses when they support us. And they love that. They hang them up. Starbucks in Pell City has them on their their bulletin boards. And it's just the way to get that community involvement. It just ties it back to the community. So I would really encourage teachers to not be scared or think they cost money. But back to this picture is we were talking about elements of poetry. This was reading and math. And for the math element in this, we did addition and subtraction, and decimals is not a third grade standard, but I did tie that in there as a challenge with they ordered from a menu. So it was a practical, like soft skill life application of that too. But here's Preston.
Let's see what he says. I hope the sound works. We'll see.
So I think it should have been more of an all of it rhyming instead of only one part of it not rhyming, because that's my favorite part about a poem is the rhyme.
Spoken like a true third grader.
Yes.
That's great.
He's writing it and he's giving like how it could be enhanced and work harder. So he's actually doing his own self-assessment right there.
Wow, that's so good. And look, like that, even that piece is so powerful. So like, and then when we talk about like tying it all together, you're exactly right. So it pulls all, like that's multiple standards. You were not even teaching that, but just that piece was really powerful. And I don't know why I skipped this slide. So something you said when you talked about this paying, I don't pay for things either. Like hear me when I say I'm a cheapskate. So I will hit up a store and ask for donations. I will talk to my parents. I will like do whatever. I bend over backwards. I also am good about like finding the costume closet in the school building. Like, you know who the hoarders are in your building, and like you can borrow things.
Yes.
I've also been known to like walk down the hallway and steal safety vests for neon days and stuff. And so like there's some creative ways to do that. Good. I love that. Look, that was a great way to start us off. This is one, I'll hit you back up. This is one I call March Madness. You may do something like this.
Yes.
We were doing, and when I taught sixth grade math, we were doing measures of central tendency. So we were looking at mean, median, mode, and range. And I had this parent who I saw this newspaper article, and she was a statistician for the March Madness, the real NCAA games that were happening in Birmingham at the arena. And they had written this newspaper article about her, and I just noticed the name. It was a parent that I had of a student that I had several years ago. And so I brought the article in and told my kids, I was like, look, y'all, this is a real life example of how, this works. And they were like, oh yeah. And then started the whole conversation about what March Madness looked like and the teams and everything. And I was like, have you ever seen on TV, like when they talk about the average number of points per game that a player has, or like how many blocks per game? And I was like, did you know that really doesn't mean they actually block somebody 7 times during that one game? Like sometimes they blocked them more than 7 times, and sometimes they had less than 7 blocks. And so we kind of talked through these real life examples. And so then we were looking like, and I like to do them a lot of times I don't know if you do it this way too, but when we know we're having those days when it's going to be kind of
Yes.
a crazy day anyway, and I'm like, what can I do to really pull the kids in that last day before spring break or before Christmas or
Yes.
before we have a teacher work day? And so this was one of those days in March, right before spring break, and I was like, okay, so it's Friday before spring break, and we
Absolutely.
got the whole sixth grade together out there. And so this video actually doesn't work, but we got them and did some like real life basketball drills. So this is them playing trash ball, and they were with teams and they were collecting data, and they filled out this data collection sheet. And so they had, I don't know, 3 minutes or so to shoot the trash balls. And then they collected how many they made in a minute or 3 minutes or whatever it was. And so we had like 15 different groups of kids. We got everybody's data. Then we did some basketball dribbling drills. And so we counted how many, how many like laps they could do or something. And then we did everybody's height, and they got the height of each person in their group. And so we held onto the sheet. And then after spring break, it was like, this is our tie back to class. Hey, remember how we did this right before spring break? Well, today we're actually going to use this information to do some stuff with. And so we went into this whole unit on, measures of center and variability. And like, it was like the light bulb went off, and it was like, like this is real math. And there's always that
Yes.
aspect for kids, which is also an engagement thing. If we can tie it to something they love or something they know,
Yes.
they buy into it, right?
Exactly. I love that.
Yeah. This is one of my favorites. This is kind of another one that I love to do. It depends on your grade level.
My niece would love this. She's 13. Yes.
Oh yeah. I forgot I had her. So we did this in class, and and this was one, like I tell people, my phone is a really scary place. So like if I see ideas online, I just screenshot it and keep it on my phone. And I keep in the notes section, like I just kind of like keep scrolling ideas. And so this was one I had seen online where somebody had taped like math problems under their kids' desks. And so in my head, I'd always like had this in the back of my head, like I'm gonna do something with this. And I don't know if the kids were talking about the upside down or something one day, and I was like, oh, this is it. I can use this. So we were doing fraction things, was kind of like we did the Stranger Things theme. And again, like all I did was red tablecloths. I had these LED lights around my classroom. You can kind of see behind me. And so I turned them red, and I taped problems underneath the tables. The kids walked in. I had the cool, 80s kind of music playing in the background. They actually had the soundtrack. And then I handed them a flashlight from the Amsty kit and handed them a clipboard and was like, hey, we're going to the upside down today. You got 30 minutes to answer 30 problems or whatever. And so they were doing this, underneath each table. And I was pulling small groups. You can see in that middle picture, like I was just pulling small groups like normal, and everybody else was scattered out under the tables, like going from table to table to find the problems. And you would have thought, Lauren, this was like the best day of the entire school year. And I was like, literally what you did was 30 math problems in one class period. But they thought it was because it was relevant to them. And they really felt like, oh, like he gets us, and I'm not a cool person, but I felt cool that day. So that was a good one.
I love what you said too about it being relevant, because where I have to challenge myself too is just because I've done it in the past doesn't mean it work this year with this group of students. And the older I get and the more years I teach, I'm like, okay, I got to stay hip with it. Like what is meaningful to them? And so I like that.
Well, I think this is one that, and that's true. So like this is just piggybacking off of that. So like this is one when I was teaching English several years ago, we read this book called How They Croaked. And if you teach like 4th, 5th, 6th, it's the best book ever. It's about how famous people died from like way in the past, how they died. And it's really gross details. It talks about pus and like blood, and it's amazing. And so I had seen this everybody sees this hospital room like transformation. I think people see this one a lot. And so I was like, I'm going to make this work. And so I did it that year. And then the next year I moved to teaching math, and I was like, all right, well, I can't read How They Croaked. So what am I going to do with this? But this was like the opportunity. I was like, all right, so I've got an English teacher next door. So I got the English teachers in 6th grade to read the book. And then when they came to math that day, and like this is unheard of in middle schools, like we don't coordinate with different subjects and across the grade level. But, it was so powerful because they went to English and read the story, and the next day they came into my room and we were doing we were talking about I can't remember, we were doing rational numbers, I believe, when we were doing this, and so we were ordering rational numbers, and you're like, what does that have anything to do with the autopsy? And in all reality, like it doesn't have a whole lot. I didn't even put a picture on here, but we just played some games that went with it. So they learned about Beethoven, and he had this. This is really gross, but I just feel like you need to hear this
I need to hear this.
at 3:53 in the afternoon. So like when they were he had dropsy, which means that his like stomach backed up with waste and his really gross details, and they ended up like hooking a hose up to his like belly and sucking all the stuff out of his stomach, because this is what they did back then. It got infected, and so they kept like putting the hose back in the same exact spot. Like, this is such good information, and the kids love the story. And so what we did, and so they ended up like sucking out 30 cups, I believe, of gunk from his belly. And so I told the kids, like, what does 30 cups look like?
Yeah.
And they don't know. So I was like, all right, we're going to find out how much 30 cups is. So we're going to go back to our operating room, and you're going to answer however many problems you can answer. You get to dip a cup of pus out of Beethoven's belly. And so we had these like big toxic barrels full of like gross watery type stuff that I made. And so the whole goal was just to answer the math problem. So they'd answer the problem, then dip the cup out and pour it into a different container, so they could eventually try to get 30 cups of pus out of his belly. Like, it was really epic.
But so I guarantee you that's the fastest they've solved 30 problems.
Yes.
So get to that. It's so motivating. It's extremely motivating.
Yeah. And I love like seeing your pictures, because you sent me these and I was like, this is so cool, because this is the 3rd grade version of that autopsy room. And I think it's so cool how we each took it just a little differently. And I'm going to play this video real quick and then you can talk about it.
Okay.
I don't think you can hear the volume in the video. It's okay. There it is. Yes. So you see the heartbeat kind of in the background.
Yes.
I love your trays too.
I love the music, setting the tone. So my mother-in-law is an OR nurse, and so she helped us out with some of our props there.
Yeah. So tell me what you did. I know you made a whole day out of it, I'm sure.
Okay. We spent all day doing this, and every teacher at our grade level did this day. It was so cool. And we did this for reading and math. You know, a lot of the times in the elementary level, we teach every single subject. And so if you're going to put all this effort into your room transformation, you want to do it with every subject. And how can you differentiate? So for this one, was this my first one? It might have been. The hospital is always a good one to start with. Yeah. So what we called it text feature surgery. Mm-hmm. And for math, we did the distributive property. So we called that multiplication surgery. So the text feature surgery is we got nonfiction articles. And I'll be honest with you, I love teaching reading, but it's really real. I mean, like the emotions of reading Because of Winn-Dixie. I mean, like we will cry together. It's so like fiction is sometimes easier to teach than nonfiction, or it's just, I mean, it's fiction is fantasy, so you can, elaborate, but nonfiction is facts. It's straight, not fake, about it. And so how can you like jazz up your nonfiction and not make it boring or a drag when it is very important? And so we cut nonfiction articles for different text features, captions, illustrations, and they had to answer questions and give a diagnosis. So they would, okay, this is your case, this is your patient, and he has these things going on. And what is your diagnosis? So the diagnosis would be, they need illustrations, this patient needs something to show. And it was really neat. And they cut it out of the article themselves and answered all these questions. And I mean, I did not have a single student that day ask me for help. They did not. They were collaborating. When I mean like the student collaboration and like support as like teams, we rotated as teams they cared about their peers learning. They were all bought in. And that literally gives me chills thinking about it, because it wasn't like, oh, come on, hurry up and finish. It was like they were bought into their classmates learning. It was beautiful. And then when we did the math, distributed property, and so it was hands-on, and we would have like say 7 times 9. Okay, so we would take one of the factors and break it apart into 2 numbers, physically break it apart, cut it, and then solve it to come up with the answer for 63, and then to see different ways to do the distributed. This one was 7 times 4, with the distributed property. Because I'm saying like distributed property, 3rd graders, these kids are 8. Okay, they're 8, 9 years old, and like, how can I make it relevant? How can I make it memorable when this is a really big skill for them in the 3rd grade? And not a single kid missed it. I mean, they're just, when you tie it back to, oh, that's what it physically means, breaking that factor in a number bond. Sometimes it's a really abstract thing. So when they can see it.
All right, we have to end with this one. So I skipped past I love black lights. I always tell people that black lights are the gateway drug to room transformation. So I always encourage people to buy a set of black lights for their grade level.
Good glow day.
The glow days, and start with a glow day because it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
fun and easy, and then find ways to integrate that. Like you said, we did a lot of annotating texts and different things like that with our black lights and our highlighters and neon paper, and it goes all the way. But I want to give you time real quick, and we got to move on. So I know this gets us both excited. So tell me about this. You said this one was your favorite.
This was one of my favorites. This is with Pie Face. I saw a version of this in action in Hope King's classroom, and decided to tie it back to equivalent fractions. And so solving this in third grade, they had to build. So that was hands-on. They were using Play-Doh. They were building it. And then we had some different rotation games, a challenge, PIED, to do, like, then you got to get pied and play the game once you completed every challenge. When I mean, there was so much learning going on. I could probably have taken that without a room transformation and done one thing a day, and it would have taken all week. And we did this in a day. And plus it was super fun. We got to pie our principal this day. She came in and played with us. It was really fun.
I don't know what video I chose. Let's see. I think it's him explaining. Do I have one of them playing pie? No. This is them getting the pie stuff. I see the challenges.
We're doing fractions on a number
First
one.
one, 3/6, 1/2, 2/4. All equivalent
I
with
wanted to see
grades.
when I picked this
So
video,
now,
I was like showing them
start at
the
0.
content that you were doing is so powerful. Yeah. And you can see the pies there too. So I love this. And if you want to see the result of this, you have to contact Lauren and see the actual pie videos. So yes, I love this. And I think just this piece of what we've already talked about shows people. I hope you can see like how excited we get too. And this is what I think is kind of fun about it, because like the whole goal here really is to find relevance with kids and like find ways to hook them. And like I get pumped up about this. And I've yet to meet a teacher who tried a room transformation and then was like, it was just okay. And like I don't think I'll ever do it again. It's almost every time they're like, oh my gosh, this was like the best day ever. Like I'm ready to do this again. And the work, it pays off, because I said it is work. You can bite it off piece by piece, and you can definitely choose like 1 in 9 weeks or 1 a semester or whatever, and make it smaller and grow it each time. But even just like that piece of it is I think it spurs people on, and it excites teachers as well.
Yes, absolutely. Like when you said like it excites the teachers, like I'm just a firm believer that like teaching is the absolute best job in the world. And one of the when I'm thinking back on my visit to Ron Clark Academy, when Ron Clark has the Essential 55. And what I love is they're so relevant. At the end, number 50 is enjoy life. It's like enjoy life and seize the day. And it's like, this makes me enjoy my life, because think about the time as educators that we spend in the classroom.
Yeah.
And it's not monotonous. It is just like the rigor is there. The rigor is there, but the enjoyment is there too. And this is just like a fun way to enjoy our careers and enjoy life too.
I love that. God, so good. All right. So this is, I think we kind of talk about engagement of students. So this is one way you can pull kids in. And even within this, I hope people are seeing the engagement by students. But kind of on a separate note, I know another passion you have is writing. And I love that we can maybe swing that into this topic on engagement a little bit. So I'm going to share it one more time. Let's see, just to give us something to talk about. So here we go. I'm going to pull up this slide, make sure I'm working all right. So let's talk really quickly, and we just have a few minutes. So maybe give us the highlights.
Yes.
I'll talk a little bit about the writing revolution, and then maybe let's tie in kind of this idea of maybe a thinking classroom, and that's something I can kind of speak to. But I'm excited to hear about the writing classroom. Should we watch the video first, or do you want to talk about it
This
first?
is a little jingle that kind of ties into it.
Okay, perfect. Let's watch this then.
Starting with sentence expansion.
A sentence always has a who and a do. That's the subject and the verb, making sense with every word. Capital at the beginning, punctuation at the end, and that's how you form a good sentence, my friend.
I love the ending pose. All right, talk me through this.
Okay, so this is an activity that we're about to start, is an activity based on the Writing Revolution. So I'm going to have to shout it out right here. This book has been, reading this and implementing these strategies in my classroom have just been like life-changing for me as a teacher and for our students. So what we're doing right here is we're about to start something that's called a sentence expansion activity.
Okay.
And it's hard to remember all the things when we think about everything a student is tasked with. When it comes to writing, there are extreme cognitive demands that are placed on that student. And the Writing Revolution has a simple, explicit instruction. It just spells it out for them so simply, of ways that we can help with those cognitive demands. Sometimes, like you've probably heard it phrased on things that students have going on called their executive functions.
Mhm.
And it never occurred to me is that these start to develop as children are very, very young, and they're not like secure, they're not concrete until they're in their mid-20s.
Mhm.
Okay. And so some of these are strategizing, initiating a series of actions, planning, organizing, resisting distractions, sustaining our effort, self-monitoring. Okay. These are all the things that go into a task of writing a paragraph. So what we will do first is we'll use a knowledge base. And if you kind of think about this as like a skill strand and then a knowledge strand, and we will talk about our content that we have learned in reading. In this next example, what you see pictured are my students. The content for our reading curriculum is Vikings. And this is covering social studies. It's covering our reading content. So the students there have the knowledge for this writing. So I got to shout out the knowledge gap. If you read this, that kind of explains the content going in. And the students will have the knowledge. And then you can give them a simple task. I think, and in this task, we had a who and a do, a subject and a verb, and it was Vikings traveled. And from that, the students collaborated together to expand that sentence. This sentence, in turn, was going to be their topic sentence for a paragraph.
Mhm.
And it's sometimes you think, oh, a topic sentence is this. You think there's not that much going into it. But for their little minds and their executive functions going all over the place, there is a lot going into it. And so I had tried a couple years ago, started like putting my feet in the water with building thinking classrooms with working in collaboration, and right there, the vertical non-permanent surfaces. And so I have some whiteboards in my classroom.
Yeah.
And writing is as much thinking, and thinking is a necessary precursor to learning. So we don't want to get right on the paper. We want to start with our thinking and our knowledge and build it, and with collaboration. So I think if we watch this little video,
Yeah, I want to watch this.
in action.
Okay, what's our kernel sentence?
Is that bigger?
Vikings traveled. Where did Vikings? Okay. What's our next question we're answering? To expand our sentence, we're going to answer this.
Here's what I like. I wish I'd started it here. Like, you left, you're out.
Yeah.
And that's all they needed.
There's a little bit of guidance.
Yep.
If they had not had the content,
Yep.
the knowledge piece, they wouldn't be able to do this task. And that's an important element.
I love this. You can see in the background, you've got your different groups. Yeah, this is really powerful. So when we talk about engagement by students, like this to me is just, I mean, look, like every single one of them, like groups in the group, when we talk about thinking classrooms, like this group of 3 is pretty magical anyway, but it's this idea that one person may have the marker, but everybody's kind of putting their, like you said, their input, their experience, their thoughts into it. And I love this, like that co-creation of content, right?
The collaboration is amazing. And then just their buy-in, how they're owning their learning, they're owning their classmates' learning.
Yeah.
And it's very important with this curriculum, or it's not even a curriculum, it's just a way of thinking, and it's important with our question words. So what I had mentioned with the group when it previously started was a kernel sentence. So if you think about a popcorn kernel, you have a kernel and then it pops and it opens up and it expands. So you have a very, very simple, and then asking the right question words. Experiment with that. If you're a teacher and you want to enhance your writing instruction in your classroom, start with sentence expansion first, and then that can lead you into something that the Writing Revolution calls a single paragraph outline.
Yeah, and I saw that too. So I'll jump in and say, again, if you want more information on this, like Lauren sent me lots of pictures and videos and some student work examples and stuff. And like I know she would really like for you to reach out to her and she could talk to you more about this because it's really cool to see the progression. And that piece also, Lauren, to me, it speaks to this ongoing learning. And I think a lot of times, especially in math, this is what I felt like in my classroom, everything was so segmented. I was always looking for a way to like extend a standard. And I think that is also powerful for engagement. So if kids know like we've got this end result we're looking at, and each day I'm kind of working to get to that part, or I'm taking what I've already got and kind of, I don't know, I think there's some excitement there. And it is that knowledge, like you said, mentioned, having the knowledge and then kind of extending from there, or like the hook. And it's like, now I can do something with it. And I think there's power in that.
We had actually, before this activity, had like a little room transformation with our Viking ships and building. We had done all of that on the front end before I gave them the paper in their hand and said, okay, now I want you to write an informational paragraph about Vikings. And they had everything that they needed. And it can be done in any subject and in any grade. This is kindergarten through 12th grade. So
okay, I'm gonna throw a question. And feel free to, you can be politically correct or you can just tell me what your honest thoughts are. So a lot of schools, a lot of systems even have very specific reading curriculums that they might have to follow, or writing curriculums. And yours may have something that y'all kind of use as a kind of reference too. But like, can you speak to like what advice you would give to someone who's like, oh, I can't do that. I have to do this on Monday and this on Tuesday and this on Wednesday. Like, do you think there's wiggle room for these types of activities, or what would you recommend for people?
I absolutely do believe that there's wiggle room, because it's just like a mindset. What's really neat is that with this Writing Revolution, it even like gives a forward. You can use this with any single curriculum, any subject. And I have used it in math. I have used it in science. I've used it in social studies, and I've used it in reading. So I've seen that. And I've also used it with 2 different reading curriculums. And it's recent, and it goes with science of reading. So I would say, now that our State Department of Alabama, now that we're using everything in the elementary level, the science of reading approved, I would say they not only encourage that, but it's also free. It's like, you don't even have to have it paid for, but it's just read it, get the mindset. And that activity was 10 minutes, and my students wrote multiple paragraphs from it. So the payoff is big.
Good. I teed that one up for you. I hope that was okay, because I think there's value in that too. But I do hear that from people, and I get it, because there's so much on a teacher's plate, and I needed them to hear, like when people see some room transformations and stuff, and they're like, I just don't have time for that. I don't have the wiggle room. I don't have that. And I'm like, yeah, but this is, like you said, it's the joy. Like this brings back the excitement, and the payoff is there. And absolutely. I just think you don't have to be the most creative person. Like I think creativity within restrictions is sometimes even more fun than like saying, hey, to go do whatever you want. It's like, hey, I've got this curriculum I kind of have to use, but how do I now make that engaging for kids? Which is kind of what we started with at the beginning with, I think science of reading scares people sometimes, because I think it's so much direct instruction. And there is that piece that our kids definitely need. But then I think equally as much, they need a chance to take that direct instruction and do something with
absolutely. And they need that as a foundation before they can, their other strands of literacy, such as comprehension, vocabulary, before they can build on those, their foundation needs to be there. I would even just say that not only is the payoff big, but once you implement this in your classroom, you really show it to your students, it's the thinking. And once the thinking starts, it becomes an end unto itself. Yep. And so it's almost really easy. There. So it's like, if you're having a hard day, in the classroom, and we all have that as teachers, it's like, guys, do you remember when we talked about, the life cycle of a plant in science? And let's tie this into this. Let's ask some good question words and think about ways to do our informational writing, which maybe seem boring, but this is a good way to collaborate and connect. And
not to mention classroom community, classroom management, like you're building the collaboration piece, all those soft skills. Like I just think it is like everything you just showed, it's really exciting to me anyway. But I think you're right.
If you have students that just stare at that blank page when they're writing,
Yeah.
Having the non-permanent surface,
Yeah.
they will get started so much quicker. They're not afraid to make a mistake. It can be easily erased, and then they just transfer that to the paper, and it's the payoff's big. It's worth it.
Good. So you've got like people who are listening. If you're still listening after 49 minutes, I hope you are. Like that's like 3 or 4 different resources that reach out to us. We can give you book titles or book names or do some research. Like those are 3 or 4 biggies. As summer is popping up for people, maybe that's something you want to kind of look into this summer or even at the beginning of next year. All right, let's land the ship. So I heard I think words are powerful. So you said behind me, I've got all my quotes back here, and so I always tell people like pull a quote in if you can find a good quote for us to kind of end the episode with. And I'm hoping you have a good one for us on engagement.
Okay, yes. One that really spoke to me it's by Elizabeth Barkley, and it says, "You're a math guy, so I kind of thought you would appreciate this. Student engagement is the product of motivation and active learning. It's a product rather than a sum because it cannot occur if either element is missing." And that just really spoke to me because we can have all the best laid plans as a teacher and think this is going to be the best lesson ever. But if our students do not have the motivation, if the engagement isn't there, the active learning, then it's not there. And I just think that this is just really neat. Both of them have to be there. It's a product of motivation, active learning. So rather than a sum. So product rather than a sum.
I love that. And it goes back to even the article at the beginning, like that, it mentioned those 4 C's, which are the exact, that connection piece, that learning environment, that piece you're talking about, that motivation piece, and then changing it, kind of flipping the script from engagement of to engagement by students. So that it's really cool how that all tied together. I thought that's a great one to share. This has been fun. Look, I told you this would fly by. I hope people who are listening kind of got caught up in the conversation too, because I always try to shoot for like 30 minutes, and somehow these conversations always end up going long because I get too pumped up about them. And I just think teaching is fun. I'm like you, like it's the best job ever, and I could just go talk about it all day long. But will you give people real quick? I know we don't have this typed out, but if you will tell people your email address, if you don't mind, and that way they can get in touch with you because they may have to want to follow up with you.
I would love that, especially if you have any questions about the Writing Revolution. So my email is lauren.brascho, BRASCHO @pellcityschools.net.
That's awesome. All right. Well, this is the end of the Power of a Moment with Jeff Norris. It's been a fun year as the 2024 Alabama Teacher of the Year. And my favorite thing is just talking to people and getting good ideas. And so I appreciate Lauren coming on the show. And I hope you have a great rest of your week with your kids. Make some fun memories with them, and have a great rest of your year.
Thanks for all you've done, Jeff, too, across this year.
That's awesome. All right. We'll talk soon.
Okay.
Bye.